The first time my new neighbor called me her boyfriend, I had a mouth full of cornbread, and her father was staring at me, like he was deciding whether I earned a handshake or, instead, a credit check. I had been warned the dinner might run tense. I had not been warned that I was about to get promoted in one sentence from the guy who fixes the shared porch light to future son-in-law. My name is Luke Branson. I was 31 then, working as a Finnish carpenter for a small crew outside of town called Millard's Gap, living in one half of an old brick duplex on Sycamore Street. It was the kind of block where the whole street smelled like wood smoke every night, at least once the weather finally turned. I had a decent life if you counted steady work, a truck that started on the first try, and a dating history so quiet my own mother had started saying, "When you're ready," like I was recovering from a house fire. My neighbor, Nora Hayes, was 29, a nurse who had moved into the other half of the duplex about 4 months back. She had a laugh that could make a bad day take one respectful step backward. She kept too many houseplants on her end of the shared porch, labeled her leftovers in the shared fridge like a woman guarding state secrets, and sang off-key while she watered those plants, always when she thought I had already gone inside. I never told her the truth, which was that I sometimes lingered on my side of the wall a minute longer, just to listen. That was the trouble with Nora. She was easy to be near in all the ways a careful man should avoid. She had learned how I took my coffee after watching me exactly twice. She knocked on the connecting wall before she ran the loud blender in the morning. She once stayed up past 1:30 in the morning, helping me sand a set of cabinet doors, a rush job I owed a client, her hair in a knot, glue-dried on her thumb. She was wearing a flannel she said she borrowed off my porch rail because yours are already broken in, and I'm weak for soft cotton. I noticed her. I wasn't blind, but I had my own rules. Don't get tangled with the woman who shares your wall. Don't make the lease weird. Don't look too long when she patted onto the porch in wool socks and said, "Do not perceive me before coffee." So when she leaned in my open doorway on a Thursday and said, "I need a favor," I should have faked a work emergency. Instead, I set down my sandpaper and said, "If this involves moving a couch, I've recently become spiritually opposed to furniture." She said, "It's dinner, with furniture, and my parents." I paused and she winced. That came out worse than I meant it. She smiled, but did not reach her eyes, and Nora had a face people trusted on sight, which made it easy to miss the small tells when she was bracing for something. There was the way her fingers found the thin silver ring on her thumb. There was the way she tucked her hair back twice, even when once would have done the job. "My sister's driving in this weekend," she said. "My folks are doing the whole family dinner thing, and I told them I might bring someone." "You're someone, right?" "I'm a very someone," I said. That's the kindest thing anyone said to me all month. She rolled her eyes, but there it was, the real smile, quick and bright, and it landed somewhere under my ribs where I kept promising myself nothing lived. I should have asked more questions. A wiser man asks more questions. I decided instead to be a man who liked making Nora smile. "Why me?" I asked. "We've known each other 4 months." Her gaze skipped away for half a second. "Because you're steady," she said. "And because when my mother corners you about your 5-year plan, you won't panic and announce you're moving to a cabin off the grid." "I make no promises," I said, and she laughed, then stepped into my half of the duplex without asking, which was how I knew this was heavier than a favor. Nora respected a threshold like it was written into law. She sat on the edge of my one good chair, close enough that I caught the clean citrus of her shampoo, and she said, "My ex is going to be there." The air in the room changed weight. "Trevor," I said because I knew the outline of him. College boyfriend, family adored him, a real estate guy with a smile like a billboard and about that much behind it. Nora never once trashed him to me, which told me more than trashing him would have. "He's tight with my brother-in-law," she said. "He's back in town for some development deal, and my mother thinks it would be nice if everyone caught up." "Nice," I repeated. "She also thinks I've gotten too picky." I set the cabinet door down for good. Nora noticed the way she noticed everything, and her eyes softened before she looked at her own hands. "I'm not asking you to lie," she said. "Not really. Just come. Sit next to me. Make it less awful." There were 100 practical reasons to say no. The wall we shared, the 4 careful months the small fence I had built between what I wanted and what I let myself want. But Nora was sitting in my chair, twisting that ring, and all I could think was this. If her family had spent years making her feel like a hard woman to love, then I wanted to be the man beside her proving otherwise. Okay, I said. Her head lifted. Okay, yeah. But if your mother asks my 5-year plan, I'm telling her I intend to become mysterious. Her shoulders dropped an inch, and she reached over and squeezed my hand, just her fingers around mine for 2 seconds longer than a thank you needed. Long enough for both of us to notice. She let go first. Thank you, Luke, she said, and the joke had gone out of her voice. That Saturday, she stepped out onto the shared porch, wearing a green dress I had never seen before. I was standing in my own door, fighting a collar button, one that acted like it had insulted my family. When I looked up, whatever joke I'd loaded went quiet in my throat. The dress was simple, knee-length, soft fabric, nothing flashy, but on Nora it made the whole tired duplex look underdressed. She stopped when she caught me staring. What? Nothing. That was not a nothing face. It was a carpenter's face, I said. I was appreciating good structure. She narrowed her eyes. Of the dress, I added, among other things, and the words were out before I could sand them down. For one small second, she didn't move. Then color rose up her neck, and she crossed the porch to my side, like she had decided not to let me escape my own sentence. Your collar's crooked, she said. I was going for approachable. You were going for strangled. She reached up and took the button in both hands, and there are moments when a man's body is more honest than his mouth, and mine went completely still. Her knuckles grazed my throat while she worked the button and smoothed the collar flat. You clean up all right, she said, not quite at my eyes. So do you? I always clean up all right. You do, I said, and that made her look up. The porch was quiet except for a truck 2 streets over, and the diner on the corner shutting down its griddle for the night. We were standing close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Close enough that if either of us leaned in, the least would become the smallest of our problems. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. She stepped back too fast. My mom, she said, reading it, and her smile went out like a pilot light. She says Trevor's already there. I hunted for something clever and came up empty. Nora squared her shoulders, dropped the phone in her bag, and said, Ready? No, I said, but I'm coming anyway. Her hand found mine on the way to the truck, and this time she didn't let go after 2 seconds. Her parents' house sat on the edge of town where the street lights gave out, windows glowing gold against the early dark, the kind of place that looked like people said grace before they judged your career. Big front porch, a wreath dead center on the door, 2 clean trucks in the drive that had better posture than I did. Nora stopped at the end of the walk. You don't have to do this, she said. I'm already wearing the good shirt. That's your reason? No, I said. You are. Her eyes searched my face, and for a second the nerves cracked open into something warmer, something that made me wonder about her, whether I was the only one pretending our shared wall was enough. Then the front door swung wide, and a woman with Nora's eyes and a sharper smile called out, There she is. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and a candle that cost more than my tool belt. Her mother hugged her first, then measured me with cheerful precision. And this must be Luke, she said. Yes, Nora said. Mom, this is Luke. Her father put out a hand. Frank Hayes. Luke Branson. Good to meet you, sir. Trevor stood by the fireplace in a pressed navy quarter zip, holding a glass of red like he'd been printed into an ad, and he smiled at Nora with far too much history. Nora, he said, you look great. Her hand tightened around mine. I felt it before I understood it. Every face in the room turned toward our 2 joined hands. Her mother blinked. Trevor's smile sharpened at the edge. And Nora, my plant hoarding, leftover labeling, off-key, singing neighbor of 4 months, lifted her chin like she was stepping off a dock into cold water. This is my boyfriend, she said. Luke, there are sentences that rearrange a room. Fire. I'm pregnant. This is my boyfriend. Nora's version landed like a dropped fork on a stone floor. Her mother's smile froze, then thawed into something delighted and dangerous. Boyfriend. Trevor took a slow sip of his wine. Her father looked at our hands, then at me, like my handshake had left out a fairly important chapter. I could have corrected her. Every sensible part of my brain lined up the words. We're actually just neighbors, and I'm here as emotional support furniture. But Nora's thumb moved once across the back of my hand, not pleading, not demanding, just asking. And so I looked her mother in the eye and said, "It's real good to finally meet you." Nora's fingers tightened again, but this time it read less like panic and more like a thank you she didn't dare say out loud. "Well," her mother said, recovering at Olympic speed, "this is a surprise." "A good one, I hope," I said, and Nora shot me a look that clearly meant you were enjoying this too much, and my look back said you started it. Her father cleared his throat. "How long has this been going on?" Nora opened her mouth. I beat her to it. Long enough for me to learn she steals the blanket during a movie and swears up and down she doesn't. Nora turned a soft pink. That was the first lie I told that night. Technically, we had watched exactly one movie through the shared wall, on my couch, when her power flickered out in a storm. Technically, she had stolen the blanket. Technically, I had spent 2 hours pretending not to notice her shoulder pressed to mine. The boyfriend part was still under review. Her mother pressed both hands to her chest. "You two watch movies together?" "We live next door, Mom," Nora said. "Same duplex." The room went quiet again. Trevor coughed into his wine. I looked down at Nora. "We were going to ease him into that part," I said, and her mouth twitched. "You had a plan?" "I had a whole plan. It involved cornbread and misdirection." And there it was, her laugh, small and startled and real, and it loosened something in my chest that I had kept bolted down for 4 months. Dinner opened with the warmth of a job interview. Nora's sister, Robin, was openly fascinated by me. Her husband asked about football, which I survived by naming 3 teams and praying none of them had folded. Carol Hayes asked her questions in a tone so sweet, one that should have come with a warning from the dentist. "So, Luke," she said, passing the green beans, "what is it you do?" "I'm a carpenter." "Finish work, mostly." "A carpenter." She turned it over, approving a little in spite of herself. "How practical." "Mostly I build cabinets that other men take credit for," I said, and Nora snorted into her water. Trevor smiled. "You did that job over on Cedar, right? Nora mentioned you once." "Once?" I should not have been pleased by that. I was pleased enough to be embarrassed by it. "She mentions me?" I asked Nora. "Don't look so proud," she said. "It was about the time you set the smoke alarm off trying to seal a countertop. That was ventilation feedback. That was a small fire." Her father's mustache moved a 1/4 inch, and I decided to count it as a win. For a while it worked. We turned into a team the way people do when they're lying under pressure, improvising, catching each other's cues, building a whole relationship out of crumbs and shared walls. Nora knew how I took my coffee. I knew she hated mushrooms, but ate them anyway, because she had been raised to fear disappointing a host. She pressed her knee to mine under the table, and every time she did it, my whole body remembered she was not actually mine. Then Trevor leaned back in his chair. "So how did it happen?" he asked. Nora went still. "How did what happen?" Robin asked, delighted. Trevor kept his eyes on Nora. "The romance. Neighbors to something more. Sounds like a movie." I felt Nora pull back inside herself without moving an inch. Her smile held, but something behind it went careful, and I hated him a little for knowing exactly where to lean. I set my fork down slow. Every face turned to me. I looked at Nora because if I was going to lie, I wanted at least the middle of it to be true. "It happened slow," I said. "I noticed the small things first. That she talks to her plants like they're co-workers who missed a deadline. That she says she doesn't want the last biscuit and then reaches for it. That when she comes home off a hard shift, she checks on everybody else before she lets herself sit down. And then one evening, I figured out the truth, that the best part of my day had become one sound, her key turning in the lock next door." The table had gone silent. Nora was looking at me a certain way, like I had taken a lie and quietly folded it into something she didn't know how to hold, and maybe I had. Trevor's smile was gone. Carol dabbed the corner of one eye. "That is very sweet," she said. "It's also not how it happened," Nora said, and my stomach dropped. Then she reached over and took my hand again, folding our fingers together on top of the table where everyone could see. "He's leaving out the part where I noticed first," she said. My heart quit behaving altogether. She looked at me, not at them, because he's stubborn and kind. Because he buys the good coffee, even though he swears he can't taste the difference. Because he actually listens when a person talks all the way through. And because he makes me feel like I don't have to keep performing that I'm fine. The lie had gone clean out of her voice, or maybe I had just lost the ability to tell the difference. And under the table, her knee found mine, and neither of us moved away. After dinner, I carried a stack of plates into the kitchen, driven by the desperate need to breathe, and Nora followed me in. The second the doors swung shut behind her, she whispered, "I am so sorry." I set the plates by the sink. "For making me your boyfriend without a formal application?" "I panicked," she said. "I walked in and I saw Trevor, and my mom was doing that face, and everybody was already braced for me to be embarrassed about being single, and then your hand was right there, and I just—" She pressed her fingers to her forehead. "I'm sorry." I turned to face her. The kitchen was warm and smelled like garlic and lemon, and from the dining room came muffled voices and Robin laughing too loud at something. Nora looked smaller in here, away from the performance, not weak, never that, just tired of being measured against a shape somebody else drew for her. "I'm not mad," I said. "You should be. I'm mostly curious about our anniversary." In spite of herself, she smiled. "March," she said. "Too vague. We deserve a holiday, Nora." She laughed, and I stepped closer, not enough to trap her, just enough that she had to tilt her chin up. "Look at me," I said, and she did, and my voice came out lower than I planned. "I said those things out there because I meant them." Her smile faded. "I know tonight is pretend," I said. "I know why you did it. But what I said about you, that part wasn't." For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then she whispered, "Mine wasn't either." The kitchen shrank around us. Her fingers were still at her temple, and slowly I reached up and touched her wrist, giving her every second to pull away, and she didn't, so I brought her hand down between us and she let me hold it. There was no audience now, no Trevor, no mother with bright wet eyes, just Nora and me beside the sink, holding hands like it was both a secret and an answer. "Your family thinks we're together," I said. "Yes. Your ex thinks we're together. Unfortunately." I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. "What do you think?" Her eyes dropped to my mouth, quick, barely there, and it about took me apart. "I think," she said softly, "that if we keep talking about it in here, I might do something unwise." Define unwise. The kitchen door swung open, and Robin stood there holding an empty wine glass, wearing the exact expression of a woman caught mid-page, one who had just walked into chapter 1, and into a book she was not supposed to be reading. "Oh," she said. "Sorry. I came for the corkscrew, but I see you two are busy emotionally undressing each other." Nora yanked her hand back. "Robin." "What?" "I'm supportive." Robin opened a drawer, found nothing, then pointed the glass at me. "For the record, Luke, I like you a lot better than Trevor. He has boat shoe energy." "I appreciate the endorsement," I said. Nora covered her face with both hands. Robin drifted back out calling, "Mom wants dessert in 5, and the door swung shut, and Nora and I just stood there looking at each other until we both started laughing. Not polite dinner laughing, not nervous laughing, the real kind that bends two people toward each other, and her shoulder bumped my chest and my hand found her waist without asking permission. She looked up, and the laughter drained out slow. My palm was at the curve of her waist. Her hand rested light against the collar she'd fixed back on the porch. "We should go back out," she said. "We should," I agreed. Neither of us moved. Then from the dining room, clear as a struck bell, came Trevor's voice. "So, who does Luke know about Charlotte?" Nora went completely still under my hand. I didn't ask what Charlotte was. Not then, because her face had already gone pale, and whatever waited in that room had taken enough from the moment we'd been standing in. I leaned close, my mouth near her ear, and said, "We go back in together." She swallowed. Then she looked at me, not helpless, not hiding, choosing. "Together," she said. "Have you ever had someone say your name like a door closing? One word that told you a whole story you weren't ready to hear? Tell me about it in the comments. I read them all." We walked back into the dining room, holding hands, and not because the audience called for it, but because Nora reached for me first. That detail mattered so much that I nearly forgot the danger. Trevor had just set the word Charlotte down in the middle of the table, like a lit match tossed in a dry brush. Carol was standing by the dessert tray, her face pinched with curiosity. Robin had gone very still. Frank looked annoyed, in the way fathers get when they sense a conversation has left the road and they can't tell who's driving. Trevor smiled at me. I was just saying, Nora never mentioned whether she told you about Charlotte. Nora's hand tightened. I kept my voice level. She tells me things when she's ready to. That landed better than I expected, and Nora glanced at me, and some of the tension eased out of her jaw. Trevor's smile thinned, and Carol frowned. Nora, honey, I thought Charlotte was settled. It is settled, Nora said. What's in Charlotte? I asked because apparently I had decided to walk straight into traffic. A job, Nora said, before anyone else could grab the answer. A hospital there offered me a position last year. A good one. Last year. She had been living next door last year. I remembered her out on the shared porch one cold night in the fall. Phone pressed her ear, pacing, and I remembered her telling me it was nothing worth talking about when I asked. It was a real opportunity, Carol said. Pediatric intensive care. Better pay. And Trevor has people down there who could have helped her get settled. Mom, Nora said. Trevor lifted both hands. I'm not saying anything. You rarely have to, she said, and I liked her so much in that second it nearly hurt. Carol set down the cake knife. We only ever wanted what was best for you. No, Nora said, quiet but clear. You wanted what looked best. The room froze. Nora's thumb moved against mine again, but this time it wasn't asking me to save her. It was anchoring her own 2 feet to the floor. I didn't take Charlotte because I didn't want Charlotte, she said. I wanted my job here, my patients here, my life here. Her eyes flicked to me, and my heart made one reckless, hopeful leap. And I was tired, she went on, of making choices that sounded impressive to everybody except me. Nobody spoke. Then Robin raised her wine glass. Honestly? Iconic. Robin, her mother hissed. What? She's right. Trevor stood. I think I should head out. For once, nobody argued. There were stiff goodbyes, a tight hug from Carol, and a handshake between Trevor and Frank that looked like 2 men agreeing, quietly, not to take each other to court. Then Trevor paused near Nora. If you're happy, he said, I'm glad. Nora didn't flinch. I am. His eyes moved to me. I didn't glare, and I didn't puff up. I just kept holding the hand of the woman who had chosen to stay, and somehow that felt like the most honest thing I'd done all night. The old me would have found something sharp to say to him, some clean line, right there on his way out the door. So I said nothing and let the quiet do the work, and Trevor left. After he was gone, dessert tasted mostly like silence and buttercream, and we didn't stay long. At the door, Carol hugged Nora too tight. I just worry about you. I know, Nora said. Her mother looked at me over Nora's shoulder. Take care of her. Nora pulled back before I could answer. Mom, I take care of myself. Then, after a beat, she glanced at me. He just makes it nicer. I had no defense against that. Outside, the air had gone cold and smelled like coming rain, and we made it halfway down the walk before Nora stopped under the porch light. I lied to you, she said. You told them I was your boyfriend. We've already established your relationship with accuracy is currently flexible. She didn't smile, so I stopped joking. Charlotte, she said, I should have told you. You didn't owe me that. I know. She wrapped her arms around herself. But I wanted to. That's the part that scares me. The porch light gilded her hair. Her green dress had gone near black in the dark, and her bare shoulders made me want to give her my jacket. They also made me not want to be that kind of man, the kind who makes a whole thing out of it. I gave it to her anyway. She glanced at me as I settled it over her shoulders. Very boyfriend of you. I'm committed to the role. Luke, Nora. A car passed, its headlights sweeping over us, and then gone. She looked down at the sleeves, swallowing her hands. I didn't tell you about Charlotte because I was scared you'd say I should go. I might have. I know. You're annoyingly decent. Sorry for the burden. And if you'd said I should go, she said, I'd have had to pretend that didn't hurt. My chest went tight. She looked up at me then, and the openness on her face was so bare I almost looked away out of respect. I didn't want to leave that duplex, she said. I didn't want to give up morning coffee on the porch or your terrible woodworking podcast through the wall. I didn't want to lose the way you always leave the last biscuit on my side, on my shelf of the fridge, then pretend you forgot it existed. I do forget things, I said. You remember the grain direction on a board you cut back in the spring. Her laugh trembled and faded. I didn't know what it meant, she whispered, wanting to stay because of you. I stepped closer. Do you know now? Her eyes searched mine. Do you? There it was, the edge we'd been walking since the kitchen, since the collar button. Maybe since the night the storm knocked the power out, and she fell asleep on my couch with her feet tucked under my leg, and I spent 20 minutes afraid to move. I know I didn't want to be your pretend boyfriend tonight, I said. Her face fell a little. I caught her hand before she could retreat. I wanted to be your real one. Nora went still. The rain started soft, ticking on the porch roof behind us. I've wanted that longer than is convenient, I said. I told myself it was being neighborly, then it was respect, then it was self-preservation. That got the smallest smile. But tonight, when you called me your boyfriend, I didn't feel trapped. I swallowed. I felt chosen, and I wanted it to be true. Her fingers curled around mine. You're not saying this because of Trevor? She asked. No. Or because my family put us through the ringer? No. Or because I look unfair in this dress? I looked her over before I could stop myself, slow enough to warm her cheeks. That, I said, is a contributing factor, not the thesis. She laughed, and then she was closer, her hand to my chest, my jacket sliding off on her shoulders. Luke, yeah, if you don't kiss me, I'm going to have to revise my opinion of your nerve. I had imagined kissing Nora in irresponsible detail, and not one of those imaginings included her parents' front porch, cold rain, and the distant chance of Robin watching from a window. It was still better than all of them. I touched her jaw first because I needed one last second for either of us to stop, and she didn't stop. She leaned into my hand with her eyes half shut, and that small surrender undid me. So I kissed her, soft at first, and she made a low sound, surprised and relieved and wanting all at once, and stepped into me, her hand sliding up to the collar she'd fixed twice that night, pulling me closer. The kiss went warm and certain, for months of not saying it pressed down into one answer. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. Well, she whispered, yeah, that complicates the lease. I'm willing to renegotiate terms. She smiled against my mouth. Addendum 1. More of that. Approved. Addendum 2. You admit the biscuit thing. Never. She kissed me again, quick and bright as punctuation, and then the porch light flickered as the front door opened and Robin's voice floated out. I knew it. Mom, you owe me $40. Nora buried her face in my chest, and I laughed so hard she had to hold on to me, and for the first time all night nothing between us felt fake. The drive home should have taken 15 minutes. It took 40, not because of traffic, but because Nora kept looking at me a certain way, like I was a board she wanted to measure twice, and I kept missing turns. You just passed our street, she said. I'm aware. You're aware and continuing. I'm giving us time to process. You're lost. I'm exploring the county. She laughed, curled in the passenger seat with my jacket still around her shoulders, rain streaking the window behind her. At a red light, she reached across and took my hand, just fingers laced through mine, such a small thing, and it moved the whole night from unbelievable to real. When we finally pulled up to the duplex, the block smelled like wood smoke and the last of the rain, familiar and safe and completely different. Nora stood on the shared porch in her green dress and my too big jacket. I hung my keys on the hook with exaggerated care, like a man afraid a sudden move might end the spell. So she said, so, we kissed. We did. Twice. 3 times if we count the one Robin interrupted. I'm absolutely counting that. I fought for that one. I took one step toward her, then stopped. Nora, yeah, I want to kiss you again. Her face softened in a way that tilted the whole porch. But, I said, because apparently I had chosen this exact moment to grow responsible, we share a wall. And I don't want a night to turn into something we don't know how to be tomorrow. She studied me. You're asking to slow down. I'm asking not to floor it just because I finally know what you taste like. Her cheeks went pink. That was unfairly effective wording. I'm suffering too. She slid my jacket off her shoulders and hung it over the porch rail, the spot where the flannels lived. Then she walked toward me, close enough that my heart started filing formal complaints. Then here's my proposal, she said. Tomorrow you take me on a real date. No parents, no Trevor, no fake anniversary. Just you and me. Try to be normal about one fact, that we've basically been married through a wall for 4 months. Married through a wall. You built me a plant shelf for the porch, back when you saw I'd run out of room. You sanded every edge so I wouldn't catch a splinter. You named my fern when I had the flu. And you once told a delivery driver I was asleep just so I wouldn't have to answer the door in my scrubs. She smiled. That's basically a vow. I leaned down until our foreheads touched. Tomorrow, real date. And tonight, I say good night like a gentleman. How disappointing. She rose up on her toes and kissed my cheek, not my mouth, and somehow that was worse, tender in a way that promised patience. Good night, boyfriend, she whispered and slipped inside her own door, and I slept terribly. The next morning, I found her out on the shared porch, dressed in flannel pants and a tank top. She handed me a mug of coffee, made exactly the way I take it. I have concerns, she said. Okay, I don't want to become a story where we try this, wreck it, and then one of us has to break the lease and the other gets custody of the good coffee maker. I would fight for the coffee maker. It has a timer. Her smile flickered and faded. I'm serious. I know. I'm scared too. Not of dating you, of doing it badly, of losing what we already have because I wanted more. And I do want more. I'm not confused about that part. Her fingers found the hem of my shirt. I want more too, she said, and there it was again. No performance, no fake label of choice. So we made rules. No kissing during an argument just to win. No pretending we're fine when we're not. No wrecking the friendship to protect the romance, which meant we still told each other the weird stuff and still argued about whose turn it was to drag the cans to the curb. That afternoon, I took her to the Saturday market down by the river, and it was ridiculous how nervous I was. At a table of handmade jewelry, she tried on a thin silver bracelet, delicate against her wrist. Too much, she said, and put it back. So I waited until a table of used paperbacks pulled her away, and I bought it. When I fastened it around her wrist down by the water, she stared at me. First day tax, I said. Her eyes went bright with something close to tears. Then she kissed me right there by the gray river, a chosen, unhurried kiss, and for the first time I let myself picture it out in the open. Nora, not as the almost I lived beside, but as the woman I got to love on purpose. A year and a half after she invented us in front of a pot roast, we still lived on Sycamore Street. For the first 5 months, we kept both halves of the duplex because we were cautious and grown, and also because Nora claimed my side of the wall was so tidy, so precise, that it read as a cry for help. Then one rainy weekend, we knocked down the fiction, moved her plants on my windowsills, mixed our books on the shelves with no regard for genre, and kept her old side as a workshop, one she called the room where my tiny sample cabinets go to feel important. Carol stopped asking about 5-year plans. Trevor became a footnote. Charlotte became a word Nora could say without shrinking. One evening in March, I came home to find her on the porch, sitting with Winston the fern, plus 2 glasses of wine, and a suspiciously nervous look. Tucked into the corner sat a small wooden bench, new and clean, exactly the kind I'd once sketched on the back of an invoice and forgotten. You built this? I asked. With help from your dad and 3 tutorials narrated by men who fear feelings. Then she pulled a key from her pocket, ours, but with a small metal charm shaped like a house hung on the ring. Too permanent? She asked softly. If you want. My throat went tight. I thought about the night she'd stood in front of her whole family, the night she called me her boyfriend, back before either of us was brave enough to admit we wanted it. I took the key ring, kissed her palm, and said, Nora Hayes, I've been permanent since the first time you borrowed my flannel off that rail, and blamed it on soft cotton. Her eyes filled. You're ridiculous, she whispered. You're home, I said. She kissed me then, smiling and crying a little at the same time, and on the little bench she'd built us, we sat tangled together until the sky went full dark. No longer pretending, no longer almost, just 2 people who had accidentally told the truth, well before they knew how to say it out loud. I still think about that first dinner sometimes, the mouthful of cornbread, her father sizing me up, the exact second she lifted her chin and called a near stranger her boyfriend. She was reaching for a shield that night. What she found was a man who had already been noticing her, quietly, through a shared wall, for 4 whole months, and hadn't known what to do about it. Funny, how the lie turned out to be the truest thing, the truest words that either of us had said in a year. So let me ask you, what would you have done if a neighbor you barely knew took your hand at a family dinner and called you hers? Would you have corrected her, or would you have held on? And have you ever built a careful little wall to keep from wanting someone, only to find out they were on the other side of it the whole time? Tell me your story down in the comments. I read every one. If this one got to you, leave a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.